Now Little King posts this paperwork, right? And here's the thing I don't like about this paperwork. This is an actual case. For those of us that know, we know this is an actual case. Now let me read this paperwork.
In what may well be the most significant hip-hop controversy of 2024, King Harris, the 19-year-old son of legendary rapper T.I., has released federal court documents alleging that Curtis, 50 Cent, Jackson cooperated with law enforcement authorities. The implications of this revelation are staggering, particularly given that 50 Cent has spent the better part of 2 decades positioning himself as hip-hop's foremost authority on street credibility and has ruthlessly ridiculed others, most notably Tekashi 6ix9ine, for cooperating with federal investigators. The man who penned Many Men, who famously survived 9 gunshot wounds, and who transformed his near-death experience into one of the most compelling narratives in hip-hop history, now finds himself confronting allegations that strike at the very foundation of his carefully constructed persona. After King Harris published the documents to his social media platforms, 50 Cent broke an uncharacteristic silence to address the claims, and his response has sent shockwaves through the industry. To fully appreciate the magnitude of this situation, one must consider who 50 Cent is within the culture. With over 30 million albums sold worldwide, a business empire valued at hundreds of millions of dollars, and a brand synonymous with authenticity and fearlessness, Curtis Jackson has long been regarded as hip-hop royalty. His entire public identity has been built upon the principles of keeping it real, never backing down, and holding others accountable to the unwritten codes of the streets. King Harris, however, has challenged every facet of that carefully maintained image, and he brought documentation to support his claims. This is not merely another frivolous social media exchange. This is a direct assault on one man's legacy, a confrontation over the very street code that 50 Cent has spent decades weaponizing against others, and a reckoning with what happens when someone questions the authenticity of one of hip-hop's most formidable figures. For 50 Cent, a man who has spent 20 years publicly dismantling the reputations of fellow artists he deemed inauthentic, the stakes could not be higher. If these allegations gain lasting traction, they fundamentally alter the lens through which the culture views one of its most respected and feared personalities. To understand how this situation escalated to such extraordinary proportions, one must trace its origins back to early 2024. At the time, 50 Cent and T.I. maintained a cordial relationship, 2 veterans from different eras of hip-hop who shared mutual respect for one another's accomplishments. Meanwhile, King Harris was actively working to establish his own identity within the industry, maintaining an active social media presence that showcased his lifestyle, his music, and the kind of youthful exuberance one might expect from a teenager with a famous father. 50 Cent, whose prolific and often merciless social media presence has essentially become a secondary career, took notice. His history of trolling public figures on Instagram is well documented. He has targeted everyone from Diddy to his own son, Marquise, with equal enthusiasm. When King Harris began posting content that caught 50's attention, the veteran rapper did what he has always done. He reposted it to his 30 million followers, accompanied by clown emojis and dismissive commentary. Initially, the exchange appeared harmless, standard internet trolling from a man who has elevated it to an art form. King would post something aspirational, and 50 would share it with captions such as, "This is T.I.'s son," or "The youth is lost." However, what distinguished this particular exchange from 50's numerous other social media skirmishes was King Harris's refusal to retreat. Unlike most of 50's targets, the young man fired back aggressively, calling out the rapper for being too old to concern himself with teenagers and labeling him a bully. This was the moment that should have prompted 50 Cent to disengage. Instead, he escalated. The situation took a darker turn when 50 began questioning T.I.'s parenting, suggesting that Tip could not control his son and implying that King lacked genuine street credibility. T.I. initially remained silent, likely hoping the conflict would resolve itself organically. It did not. Then 50 Cent crossed a line that carries significant weight in hip-hop culture. He brought Tamika "Tiny" Harris, T.I.'s wife and King's mother, into the conflict. He posted commentary about her appearance, resurfaced old rumors, shared side-by-side comparison photographs mocking cosmetic procedures, and even referenced sexual assault allegations that T.I. and Tiny had faced, allegations they denied and for which no charges were ever filed. King Harris's reaction was immediate and visceral. He took to Instagram Live, visibly furious, declaring that 50 had opened a door he could not close. The broadcast attracted over 200,000 concurrent viewers, with the comments section divided between those urging restraint and those supporting King's right to defend his mother. What the public did not yet realize was that King Harris was not merely venting his frustration. Behind the scenes, he was conducting research, preparing something that would fundamentally shift the entire narrative of this conflict. On March 15, 2024, King Harris posted a series of Instagram stories that brought the internet to a standstill. Attached to the posts were federal court documents, accompanied by a pointed caption. "Since you want to talk about who's real and who's fake, let's talk about what you did in 2005. You're the biggest snitch in hip-hop, and everybody's scared to say it." The documents pertained to a 2005 federal case involving Kenneth Supreme McGriff, a figure inextricably linked to 50 Cent's personal history. McGriff was the leader of the Supreme Team, one of the most notorious drug organizations to operate in Queens, New York, during the 1980s. By the early 2000s, McGriff was attempting to transition into legitimate business through music industry investments, but he harbored deep animosity toward 50 Cent. Street lore has long connected McGriff to the infamous 2000 shooting in which 50 Cent was struck 9 times. When 50 released Get Rich or Die Tryin' in 2003, he also released Ghetto Churan, a track that detailed the operations of various Queens drug dealers, including McGriff's Supreme Team, by name. McGriff was reportedly enraged. Federal prosecutors later alleged that McGriff ordered retaliatory hits on 50 Cent and individuals within his circle, a sequence of events that investigators connected to the murders of E. Moneybags and, ultimately, Jam Master Jay of Run DMC in his Queens recording studio in 2002. The documents King Harris published indicated that Curtis Jackson was listed as a cooperating witness in the federal case against McGriff, case number 00539, United States versus Kenneth McGriff. The filings showed that 50 Cent met with FBI agents on at least 3 separate occasions between 2003 and 2005, during which he provided detailed information regarding threats made against him by McGriff and his associates. What made the allegations particularly damaging was the nature of the cooperation. The documents suggested that 50 Cent had not merely responded to a subpoena, a compulsory legal process that affords an individual little choice, but had voluntarily initiated meetings with federal agents prior to being officially called to testify. Within the framework of street code, this distinction is critical. Being compelled to testify under the full weight of the legal system is one matter. Voluntarily providing information to law enforcement behind closed doors is another entirely. Among the most widely circulated documents was an FBI 302 form, the standard document used by agents to memorialize witness interviews. Dated August 2005, the form detailed a meeting in which Curtis Jackson provided information about McGriff's involvement in the music industry and his alleged criminal activities. The form noted that Jackson was cooperative and forthcoming, and provided valuable intelligence regarding the subject's operations and associations. Additional documents revealed that 50 Cent's testimony and information were instrumental in securing wiretaps on McGriff's telephone communications. In federal cases, judicial authorization for wiretaps requires a demonstration of probable cause, and witness testimony frequently serves as a foundational element in establishing that threshold. This meant that 50's cooperation was not peripheral, it was central to the construction of the government's case. The FBI 302 forms further indicated that 50 Cent provided information about meetings in which McGriff allegedly discussed drug operations, identified associates and their respective roles within the organization, detailed specific threats made against him, and explained the context surrounding Ghetto Churan and why it provoked McGriff's hostility. Perhaps most significantly, the documents showed that 50 Cent provided intelligence regarding McGriff's financial activities, including allegations of money laundering through music industry investments, precisely the type of financial intelligence that federal prosecutors require to build RICO cases. An additional layer of complexity was revealed in the documents. In 2008, when McGriff's case proceeded to trial, 50 Cent initially refused to testify in open court, citing concerns for his personal safety and a desire to avoid being publicly labeled a cooperator. After the presiding judge threatened contempt proceedings, 50's legal team negotiated an arrangement whereby his prior statements to federal agents would be entered into evidence without requiring him to appear on the witness stand. This meant the jury received the substance of his cooperation while he avoided the spectacle of courtroom testimony. King Harris addressed this directly during a subsequent Instagram live broadcast that attracted over 500,000 viewers. He gave the feds everything they needed, then tried to avoid testifying publicly because he knew how it would look. He wanted to help law enforcement but didn't want to be seen doing it. At least have the integrity to own your actions. Kenneth McGriff was ultimately convicted in 2007 on murder-for-hire charges and sentenced to life in federal prison. While the conviction rested upon multiple witnesses and various forms of evidence, 50 Cent's cooperation was cited multiple times in the government's case filings and was referenced by the judge during sentencing. For approximately 48 hours following King Harris's revelations, 50 Cent maintained an unusual silence. For an individual who typically engages with his Instagram audience multiple times daily, this absence was conspicuous and widely interpreted as an indication that the allegations had struck a nerve. Speculation mounted that his legal counsel had advised restraint, or that he was carefully calibrating his response. On March 17, 2024, 50 Cent finally addressed the situation in a direct-to-camera video posted to his Instagram account. "You really think I'm concerned about paperwork from 20 years ago?" he began. "Let me explain something to those of you who don't understand how the real world operates. When someone attempts to take your life, and I mean genuinely tries to kill you, shoots you 9 times, and leaves you for dead, you have every right to protect yourself. The federal agents came to me. I did not seek them out. They already had an active case. They asked me questions about threats against my life. That is not cooperating against your own people. That is survival." He continued with increasing intensity. "Kenneth McGriff attempted to have me murdered on multiple occasions. He killed people in my circle. Am I supposed to remain silent and allow him to continue? I did what was necessary to protect myself and my family. And for the record, I never testified in a courtroom. I never sat on a witness stand and identified anyone. Federal agents utilized information I provided regarding threats against my own life. That is fundamentally different from what you're suggesting." 50 then directed his response specifically at King Harris, and this young man, T.I.'s son, referencing paperwork he discovered on the internet. "You weren't even alive when these events occurred. You have no understanding of what I endured. You're trading on your father's name, posting on Instagram as though you've accomplished something. I survived the streets. I survived 9 gunshot wounds. I built an empire from nothing. What have you achieved? You're 19 years old with no accomplishments of your own, and you presume to question me." The response garnered millions of views within hours. Public opinion was sharply divided. Some observers felt 50 Cent articulated a legitimate distinction, that protecting oneself in the aftermath of a genuine assassination attempt is qualitatively different from cooperating against one's own associates. Others countered that 50 had spent years demolishing the reputations of others for any form of cooperation with law enforcement, affording them no opportunity to explain their circumstances or provide context. King Harris was swift in his rebuttal, returning to Instagram Live with a response that many observers found compelling. Now he wants to provide explanations. Now he wants to offer context. But when it was Tekashi, when it was anyone else who cooperated, he had no interest in their context. He didn't care about their reasons. He simply labeled them rats and systematically destroyed their careers. You cannot have it both ways. Either cooperating with federal authorities is wrong, or it isn't. You don't get to determine when it's acceptable based solely on whether it's you or someone else. King pressed further on 50's claim about never testifying in court. He says he never testified as though that absolves him. He met with FBI agents on multiple occasions. He provided them with detailed intelligence. He helped them construct their entire case. The only reason he didn't testify in person was because he didn't want the public to witness him doing it. That doesn't make it better, it arguably makes it worse. He wanted to assist law enforcement while concealing that fact from the world. The controversy rapidly expanded beyond the two principles. Hip-hop commentators, media personalities, and industry figures began weighing in publicly. Those who defended 50 emphasized the uniqueness of his circumstances, the multiple assassination attempts, the murder of people in his orbit, the genuine and ongoing threat to his life. Those who sided with King Harris argued that the street code does not accommodate exceptions and that 50's decades of attacking others for cooperating made his position untenable. 50 Cent posted again, this time adopting a more threatening posture. King Harris, if you want to continue down this path, I will expose everything about your family. I will show the world who T.I. really is. I will reveal what your mother has truly done. You think you accomplished something by posting old paperwork? I possess current information that will dismantle your entire family's legacy. This escalation appeared to cross yet another boundary. T.I. finally intervened more forcefully, issuing a public statement. 50, you're my brother, but you're now threatening my family over an Instagram dispute with my son. That's not how we conduct ourselves. Let's have this conversation man to man, not on social media. As of this moment, the situation continues to develop. The paperwork King Harris brought to public attention has been verified as authentic. Multiple journalists and hip-hop investigative outlets have confirmed that the court documents exist and do indeed reflect 50 Cent's cooperation with federal agents in the Kenneth McGriff case. Whether one characterizes that cooperation as snitching depends largely on one's perspective and interpretation of street code. What cannot be credibly disputed, however, is the question of hypocrisy. 50 Cent constructed a significant portion of his post-music career upon the practice of trolling and publicly shaming others for cooperating with law enforcement. He transformed Tekashi 6ix9ine INE's cooperation into a global punchline, generating countless memes and social media posts. He questioned the credibility of numerous artists over the years, including Ja Rule, Rick Ross, and Gunplay. Now that his own cooperation has been spotlighted, his defense rests on the assertion that his circumstances were fundamentally different. That is an extraordinarily difficult position to maintain when one has shown absolutely no mercy or nuance when evaluating the actions of others. The hip-hop community finds itself deeply divided along generational and philosophical lines. Older listeners who remember the McGriff situation, who recall the assassination attempts, the murders of E Moneybags and Jam Master Jay, and the genuine danger 50 Cent faced, tend to be more sympathetic. They argue that 50 was a victim exercising his right to self-preservation, not a criminal betraying his own organization. Younger fans and those who adhere strictly to street code principles counter that communication with federal authorities is communication with federal authorities, regardless of the circumstances that precipitated it. King Harris, for his part, has emerged from this confrontation with considerably more credibility than most observers anticipated. He did not merely hurl accusations, he presented verifiable documentation. He conducted thorough research, identified specific case numbers, and directed the public to records they could independently examine. In a conflict where virtually everyone expected 50 Cent to annihilate him through sheer force of personality and platform, King Harris held his ground and, in the estimation of many, won the exchange. T.I. occupies an unenviable position, caught between loyalty to his son and a long-standing professional relationship with 50 Cent. He is attempting to de-escalate the conflict while simultaneously shielding his family from 50's threats to release additional damaging information. As for 50 Cent, his reputation has undeniably sustained damage, though it would be unwise to count him out. This is a man who has survived gunshot wounds, bankruptcy, and innumerable public feuds. His core audience will likely remain loyal. Nevertheless, the snitch label carries extraordinary weight in hip-hop culture, and this episode has unquestionably eroded the moral authority he once wielded when attacking others over their interactions with law enforcement. Perhaps the most significant dimension of this controversy is what it reveals about hip-hop culture itself. For decades, cooperation with law enforcement has been regarded as the ultimate violation of an unwritten but rigidly enforced code. Yet as hip-hop has evolved into a mainstream, corporate enterprise, those boundaries have become increasingly ambiguous. Many of the genre's most successful artists have, in various capacities, engaged with the legal system in ways that do not withstand strict scrutiny under traditional street code standards. The conversation King Harris has ignited is compelling the culture to confront its own contradictions, double standards, and selective application of principles it claims to hold sacred. It raises uncomfortable but necessary questions. Is the code applied consistently, or does it bend for those with sufficient wealth, influence, and cultural capital? Can an individual who cooperated with federal authorities in one context credibly condemn others for doing the same in different circumstances? This remains one of the most consequential beefs of 2024, and there is every indication that it is far from concluded. 50 Cent is constitutionally incapable of allowing a perceived slight to go unanswered, and King Harris has demonstrated that he possesses both the courage and the preparation to continue pressing the issue. The documents are now part of the public record, accessible, verifiable, and permanent. Whether this episode permanently alters the public's perception of 50 Cent remains to be determined. But one conclusion is inescapable. King Harris accomplished what most believed to be impossible. He forced 50 Cent onto the defensive, compelled him to explain and justify his actions, and made him play a role he has never been comfortable inhabiting, the one who has to answer questions rather than ask them. That is something even Ja Rule, at the height of their legendary rivalry, was never able to achieve.